Hey folks, this is Kalani. Demon Hunters are finally active on live, so we can happily create one and we can happily tank with them, which is what we're going to be doing in this video. I'm going to be showing you how to get the most out of your Demon Hunter as the Vengeance spec, that is the tank spec. So as with all of these videos, we'll go through the abilities that we have, how they tie in together, look at the talents and see what talents are best in different situations, and see how our overall tanking rotation kind of comes together, because obviously we don't really have a set rotation and things are going to depend very much on the fight, very much on your healers, how much damage you're taking, and that kind of thing. So we'll start with the abilities. We have a very basic taunt, 30 yard range, 8-second cooldown, taunts the target for 3 seconds. So that's cool. We have Shear, which is our first generating ability for our resource Pain. So it deals a little bit of physical damage and has a small chance to shatter a lesser soul fragment from your target that heals you for about 16k health when consumed. It also generates 10 pain. So there's that soul fragment. If you go close to a soul fragment, you will absorb it, so that's a nice bit of healing. Then we also have Soul Cleave. This is how we're going to primarily spend our pain. Costs 30 to 60 pain. It deals damage dependent on how much pain you use. So if you use 30, that's the least it can do, and 60 is the most. Obviously, if you spend in between that, it's going to be a nice gradient. Then we also heal, dependent on, again, how much pain we spend. So if we up at the 60 pain end, we heal for about 81k damage, and then it's going to be less for the 30 pain. And it also consumes all soul fragments within 20 yards. So if we have some soul fragments, and we don't want to run over to them, we can consume them using Soul Cleave. And that's going to just add on to that heal that Soul Cleave is giving us. Next up is Immolation Aura. It's about a 12.5 second cooldown, which is affected by haste, so it makes haste very important for a Demon Hunter tank. You engulf yourself in flames, instantly causing some fire damage to enemies within 8 yards, and then you radiate for fire damage every second, and it lasts for 6 seconds. You also generate 20 pain over those 6 seconds. We also have a basic interrupt, 15-second cooldown, interrupts and locks for 3 seconds, but it generates 50 pain on a successful interrupt, making it very powerful because you could interrupt for basically a free Soul Cleave, almost at its max potential, so get those interrupts in. Next up we have Infernal Strike. This is basically a glorified heroic leap, 20-second recharge, you can have 2 charges, and you leap through the air, dealing fire damage where you land. You can go pretty far, making you one of the most mobile tanks because you've got 2 charges of that and you've also got your double jump glide. So you can get around, you really can get around the battlefield, which is fun. We have Throglaive, which is just a basic ranged ability. It ricochets to 2 additional targets within 10 yards, generates high threat, so that's very important for a pull. And it's on a pretty low cooldown, so you can happily spam it if you really want to, but I mean, there's more important abilities to use. Speaking of more important abilities, we have our Firebrand. Now, while this is a damaging ability, it's also one of your most important tank cooldowns for your mitigation, because when you apply it to someone, not only does it deal a butt-ton of fire damage, it also reduces the damage that that target does to you by 40% for 8 seconds. So if you're expecting a very large hit from a certain mob or a boss, happily slap Firebrand across their buttocks, and that's almost cut in half. That's on a 1-minute cooldown. We also have some sigils to play with. Sigil of Flame is a basic AoE. Now these sigils trigger after 2 seconds of being on the floor. Sigil of Flame is an AoE which deals fire damage and then applies a dot which deals more fire damage over 6 seconds. So there we go. We also have Sigil of Misery. This is where utility comes in. Place a Sigil of Misery at the target location, activating after 2 seconds, and causes all enemies affected by the sigil to cower in fear, disorientating them for 30 seconds. So if you need to crowd control people in a pinch, you can basically make people cower in fear. Sigil of Silence is what you might expect. Again, triggers after 2 seconds and silences all enemies affected by the sigil for 6 seconds. AoE Silence, probably one of the most powerful sigils that you have. That's incredible on an AoE caster pull. Just everything comes running to you. It's brilliant. Then we also have some other defensives to work with. We have Demon Spikes, costs 20 pain, 12.5 second recharge, once again affected by haste, and you surge with Fell Power, increasing your parry chance by 20% and reducing physical damage taken by 28%, which is dependent on your mastery, I would add, for 6 seconds. Now we also have Darkness on a 3-minute cooldown. Summons darkness around you in an 8-yard radius, cloaking friendly targets and granting a 20% chance to avoid all damage from an attack, which lasts for 8 seconds. Which triggered empowered wards. So that's supposed to do that. Maybe that's a little broken right now, but you should be able to see it in a Demon Hunter DPS video where it drops the Puddle of Darkness and anyone inside it has that 20% chance to avoid damage. Now, we have Empower Wards, which shouldn't really trigger a 3-minute cooldown, but that's fine, which reduces magical damage taken by 30% for 6 seconds on a 20-second cooldown, making that very potent indeed. You can happily use this as many times as you want in a fight for any magical damage that you're going to be taking. Now we also have some random bits and bobs up here. Spectral Sight, which has a few uses, including seeing through walls, detecting cloaked enemies, and seeing hidden demons, as well as Imprison, which is just a basic CC effect for any demons. Now, as far as talents go, we actually have a few choices, which is kind of cool. Sadly, some of them work a little better with some more talents down here, which we don't have access to yet because we're only capped at 100 for now. But bear in mind, your talent options open up a lot more when you can take things like Abyssal Strike to reduce the cooldown on Infernal Strike and increase its range, and then also take something like Flame Crash where you create a sigil of flame when you land with Infernal Strike. So you can see how that pairs together really well. But for now, we're playing with Agonizing Flames mostly. Immolation Aura increases your movement speed by 30% and deals 50% increased damage, and Razor Spikes. While Demon Spikes is active, you deal 20% increased physical damage and your melee attacks snare targets by 50% for 6 seconds. So Agonizing Flames, typically the one to go for here. Very good for single target, very good for AoE. Your Immolation Aura damage is going to be up there definitely. And then we also have Feast of Souls. Soul Cleave heals you for an additional 25k, give or take, over 6 seconds. So a nice heal over time portion of your main healing ability. So, you know, every little helps. We also have Fallout. Immolation Aura's initial burst has a chance to shatter lesser soul fragments from enemies. So those soul fragments, obviously, are the ones that we can happily suck up with Soul Cleave. With Immolation Aura on a 12-second cooldown, give or take, you have a chance to get more lesser soul fragments essentially every 12 seconds, and it's going to depend on how many targets you can hit with Immolation. We also have Burning Alive. Every 2 seconds your Firebrand deals fire damage to the target and spreads from the primary target to a nearby enemy. So if we apply Firebrand, hopefully they're going to be close enough, but after 2 seconds, not quite close enough. So that effect, that 40% reduced damage, would actually bounce to another target, and only the primary one can bounce. So you can bounce at 6 seconds, 4 seconds, and 2 seconds left. So in a perfect environment, you can actually get that Firebrand on to 4 targets. Now, it's only going to last for 2 seconds at the end when you get the last target, but hey, that's still 40% damage reduction from 4 targets, making it incredibly potent if you're in an AoE scenario. But obviously, if you've only got 1 target to play with, happily take Fallout if you want to play about with the lesser soul fragments, or if you want that more reliable healing, take Feast of Souls instead. Our current stat priority is Haste above Mastery, above Versatility, above Critical Strike. Haste obviously very important for reducing the cooldown on those abilities which are affected by Haste, and then our Mastery increases the physical damage reduction portion of our Demon Spikes, as well as increasing our attack power, giving us even more DPS. So as far as the basic single target fight goes, we're going to be using Shear as often as possible to fill any global cooldowns to get that pain racking up. When we get to 60 pain, we want to preferably use it on Soul Cleave for the damage, but if you need the health from Soul Cleave before you get to 60 pain, make sure you're topping yourself off with that Soul Cleave. Even if it's a 30 pain Soul Cleave, it's still going to be worth it if it stops you from dying. Make sure you use Immolation Aura on cooldown. Make sure that pain is not going over the 100 cap, so spend it with Soul Cleave. You also want to keep 1 Demon Spikes rolling, so have 1 charge going as often as possible. As soon as you're going to tick over to the 2 charges, make sure you try and use it again. Save that 1 charge for any unexpected spikes of damage, or just keep your healers happy. For such a short cooldown and such a high physical damage reduction, that's pretty damn powerful. So your healers are going to love you if you keep that up as often as you can. Then you can also use Infernal Strike for the additional damage. Make sure you save 1 charge in case you need to move anywhere suddenly. So you're using 1 charge for damage and keep 1 charge for movement. And then you can also use your Firebrand. Now Firebrand is a little more complicated because it's one of your big mitigation cooldowns, meaning if you use it at the wrong time you could potentially waste it, but it does deal a lot of damage, so you want to use it as often as you can, but try and get the damage reduction portion of it to help you the best it can. So if you're expecting high damage, make sure you use it before that high damage comes and keep yourself alive. On a single target fight, Sigil of Flame doesn't seem to be too worth it, but as soon as you add a few more targets, happily light them all up with Sigil of Flame. That's extra DPS right there, but make sure you're keeping everything else going. That's the most important part. Sigil of Flame's damage is kind of low right now, especially when you don't have any talents to augment it, so keep that maybe on the back burner unless you do have a free global cooldown, and use it as you will. Obviously, for any large magic damage encounters, keep your Empower wards going as often as possible. Then obviously you've got your Sigil of Misery and your Sigil of Silence to use as you see fit. The very last ability that we have to talk about is your Metamorphosis. It's on a 3-minute cooldown, turns you into a huge demon, and honestly you can use it as a tank or a DPS cooldown because it increases your maximum and current health by 30%, giving you a bit of a boost there, but the main thing here is it generates 7 pain every 1 second, giving you more pain to use for soul cleaves, which is either going to let you heal for more or deal a lot more damage. So use it as you see fit. If you really need that extra pain to make sure you're staying alive, use it when heavy damage is coming, and if it's not going to come at all, use it for the DPS increase. And that's pretty much Demon Hunter tank right now. It's kind of simple, keep everything on cooldown more or less, but there's also a few nuances here and there which allow you to really shine. It's not a terrible tank right now, you do deal quite a bit of damage, which is very nice, but your mitigation allows you to be quite a smooth tank to heal as well, and you're also healing yourself for quite a lot, which I'm sure your healers will appreciate. So that's it for the Demon Hunter tank. If you have any questions or queries, please leave them in the comment section below, and I'll try to get back to you. Remember to leave a like just below the video before you leave. If you want to see more, make sure to subscribe. But apart from that, thanks for watching folks, good luck and have fun, and as always, I will see you next time.